Mentioned to you at the start of the programme, we had planned on debating this morning whether or not government immigration policies were working. Has Ireland reached capacity? Because, as you know, many asylum seekers as well as Irish people can't get accommodation. And we asked 16 government TDs and senators from Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Green Party to come on the programme and debate with the opposition, but not one was available for different reasons. So we said we're still going to do the topic and discuss it, and Peadar Tóibín, Aontú leader and TD for Meath West, is with me on the line. Morning to you, Peadar.
Good morning, Owen. How are you?
I'm good. Look, I mean, yesterday the ESRI brought out research that suggested that 141,000 people arrived in Ireland in the last 12 months, representing a 31% increase on the previous year. This was actually the 12 months to April, and the Irish Refugee Council said it's completely unacceptable that the country with the wealth and resources of Ireland can't accommodate the number of people who have sought protection here over the last 18 months. In your view, is the government's immigration policies working?
Yes, so first of all, I want to say that Irish people, I think, are generous people, and they do want to help. They want to be able to give support to people who are fleeing from war and violence. And, you know, people recognise that many migrants in this country have made a very positive contribution in the work that they do. And people want to see equality in Ireland amongst everybody who is here. But I do feel that at this stage we're way beyond time that we have a proper political debate on this issue. And Aontú has been calling on the government to have a proper political debate on this issue. And similar to the fact that no government TD would show up for this discussion, it's not been had in the Dáil either. And this is creating a vacuum. And that vacuum is actually, I believe, pushing the debate underground. And because it's happening underground at the moment, it's been taken over by extreme views and extremists in that space. So the debate has been had practically in every home in the country, in every house in the country, except the houses of the Oireachtas. And we have a responsibility in the houses of Oireachtas to represent people's views and to make sure that there's proper leadership in relation to this. I've said for a long time, I believe that the government's immigration policies are creating great difficulties across the country. So there's no consultation in many areas. They're not talking to communities about what's happening. Communities are in the dark in relation to it. There's literally no community dividend happening. So communities, small villages that are taking on large number of peoples, or inner city areas with, you know, very poor services taking on people. The government is not putting the necessary resources into those locations, like doctors, like school places, like transport, for example, so that they can handle those places.
Right. The government would say that they have to respond and answer to the European Union, and they would have an obligation morally and, of course, within the EU to take people into this country. And as I referenced there, Nick Henderson from the Irish Refugee Council says it's unacceptable that a country with the wealth and resources like Ireland can't accommodate these people. So in that sense, we're not a struggling country. Should we not be able to accommodate these people?
We're not a struggling country, but unfortunately the government is struggling to provide infrastructure. So right now, obviously, last year we had a population of 141,000 people coming into the country. That's twice the size of Galway City. So Galway City has a university, it has a university hospital, it has dozens of schools, it has loads of tens of thousands of houses and infrastructure. But the government is not putting that into place on an annual basis to be able to deal with a population increase relative to twice the size of Galway City. And there's a simple maths here, there's a physics here. If you don't provide the infrastructure and the capacity, you simply won't be able to meet the needs of the people that are coming in, and you put further pressure on the system. So, you know, the government is not even implementing its own policy. We in Aontú put in parliamentary questions which found out that 5,000 people were deported over the last 5 years. So that's people who've gone through the whole asylum process, where the government has decided that these 5,000 people are not actually asylum seekers and that they should be deported from Ireland. But only in 10% of those cases were they actually deported from the country. Well over 75% of the people who received deportation orders in those 5 years were never deported. So we have a kind of a voluntary deportation system happening in the state, and that's a problem.
Okay, what's the Aontú stance on immigration? Are you pro or anti-immigration?
See, and I think even putting the question question in that is a mistake, because we know that there's going to be some level of immigration. We know that in our hospitals and in our hospitality industry, etc., there's always going to be some level of people coming into the country, and we do recognise there always is going to be a responsibility on us to help people who are fleeing from war and violence. But what we're saying is that the figures that the government are dealing with at the moment are not sustainable, and they're not manageable. And we have to come to the realisation that we have to match our level of immigration with the level of resources, with the level of housing, with the level of capital infrastructure that's being created, and that's simply not happening. I think the government even realised that, because, for example, there's a pull factor on Ireland at the moment. Our social welfare offering to migrants is a lot higher than other countries, 10 times what it is in Finland. And we in Aontú have been saying that we should equalise those social welfare packages with the rest of Europe, so people don't come to Ireland on the basis of it being a more attractive social welfare location, because we know that a third of people who come to Ireland have actually come to another European country first and then come to Ireland.
Right.
There's a problem, for example, with the States, in terms of about 5,000 people coming in every year without the proper documentation or with no documentation. And again, many of these are travelling from other European countries where they had to have documentation to get on those flights. And we're saying to the government needs to get strict in relation to that.
Another criticism of the government is that it's the Department of Children that has been leading on this issue for the last 18 months. And a lot of opposition and even people on the ground are saying, why didn't the Department of Housing take a more forward role here?
Well, there is a fight within government at the moment. Immigration is a hot potato. Nobody really wants to deal with it. There was an effort by the Greens to bring in housing so that they would take responsibility on it, and the housing minister said that he wouldn't do it, and as a result they want to leave the immigration issue within a Green Party ministerial department in the run-up to the elections. But that's not good enough. That's not helping people, either migrants or people who live in this country for a long time. So, what we need for the government to do, first of all, is have a debate around the issue, a respectful debate. Because if we don't have a respectful debate in Leinster House on this issue, it's going to be a vacuum, and vacuums are never good. And we see what happened in a shocking situation in Dublin just last week. That's the first responsibility. The second responsibility we have to realise is that there is a serious problem with the delivery of infrastructure in Ireland, and unless that's fixed, we cannot take in the numbers that we're taking in at the moment, that there has to be a reduction in relation to that. And then to make sure that, we have the consultation with communities, we have the community dividend. Like right now, 85% of all migrants coming into Ireland are staying in a hotel or a guest house. Yeah. So that means you have a situation whereby downstream tourist businesses and incomes dependent on those hotels and guest houses are significantly suffering, and the government needs to realise that and fix that for people.
And that was the purpose of us wanting to have this debate on the show this morning, Pater, because as you say, everybody in the country is talking about it, but it doesn't seem to be spoken about within the houses of the Oireachtas, because maybe, we've seen things be twisted a little bit, and if you go against maybe the norm, then you're tarred or, pigeonholed into one corner. But, we asked, as I said, 16 government TDs and senators to come on the programme and to talk about the government's policies, and none of them were available. And even one advisor, who I won't name, to one TD said that they found it, speaking in a personal capacity, very disheartening that a local radio station would even consider this sort of debate on air, which I think is just, that's incredible as well.
It is. See, there's a couple of problems here. I think that, first of all, a lot of the politicians are afraid to discuss this issue. But I would say to them, if you don't stand up, show leadership, and respectfully discuss this issue, because this issue can be discussed in a humanitarian and a generous and a respectful fashion. If you don't do it, it will be left to the people on Telegram and elsewhere who want to mobilise people's fears, to accentuate them, and then to use that and harvest that fear in terms of their own political uses. So what we're saying is that don't censor this debate. If you censor this debate, it's going to go in a negative direction. Like, the government have not touched this debate over the last 3 years properly. And actually, I believe that has actually fueled the hard right. It's fueled those in the extreme, and it's fueled those who are out burning our capital city last Thursday. The antidote to this, the remedy for this problem, is respectful, open, decent discussion on this to ascertain where the people of Ireland are on this, and then to make the situation sustainable and manageable. But if the government keep, being afraid of taking that leadership role, we're going to see the situation get worse, I believe.
Is the government getting any way better in relation to it? Because Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach, came out a few months ago and said that Ireland was nearing capacity, and some people would have said that they had raised that with him previously, but he has come out and said that now. So are they starting to listen?
Yeah, I've no doubt that the government are starting to listen in relation to this. Like, I find it amazing that the same ministers who are now saying that we're nearing capacity, or that we need to reduce to slow numbers, I think is another quote from the government, are the same people who were very happy to throw around names for people who basically said the same thing 10 months ago. And this is the issue here, is that people are too quick to pigeonhole individuals who have real concerns.
Okay, but on the flip side of that, and I just want to again try and be as balanced as we can without having a member of the government here, but there will be people listening that would say we are not at capacity, we can absolutely take more migrants into this country, and we have a moral right to do so. When you look at what's happening in Palestine, in Ukraine, these people are fleeing war, they need to be accommodated here. What would you say to that?
Well, listen, don't get me wrong. I honestly, and I mean this in a respectful way to the government, I think the government are pure useless when it comes to delivering infrastructure. 85% of the people who pledged accommodation for Ukrainians under the government scheme never had that pledge realised. The government, back in 2020, in December 2021, the government promised 700 modular houses. 500 of those now are still not built yet. Like, we have a government that is standing over 3,500 empty local authority houses at the moment, taking 8 months to turn them around to rent them out to people, while in the private sector it takes 3 weeks to turn around a rental accommodation and to re-rent it. We're seeing with the National Children's Hospital, 6 years late and 1.4 billion over budget. Metro North, 300 million euros spent and not a shovel put into the ground. All the flood defences around the country that are taking 8-9 years for planning applications to even be processed. This government has a real problem in the delivery of, capital infrastructural projects. And if it were better, we'd be able to do more. But the fact is, we have the government we have for another year, potentially, and as a result, we have to deal with the realities of the lack of capital infrastructure provision in this country. The government definitely have made the situation worse with their inability to deliver public infrastructure. But, as I said, it's a case of maths, it's a case of physics. In relation to if you add double the population of Galway City into the country without providing an extra hospital, without providing an extra university or the tens of thousands of houses necessary, you're going to come into a problem. And that's where we are at the moment.
All right, listen, we'll have to leave it there. That is Peadar Tóibín, Aontú leader and TD for Meath West. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning.